Well, my friends, we are getting dangerously close to the 2022 midterm elections. Debates are in full swing. We have multiple debates that I will be live streaming this week and next week and the week after. And I want to start today with three important races where we have either a debate to talk about or a public appearance or something. We will first talk about Texas governor, which is incumbent Republican Greg Abbott versus Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke. We will then talk about Republican Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, the incumbent, against the challenger Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings, who is won the Democratic primaries and is now facing Marco Rubio. And then we will talk about a very important race, Pennsylvania gubernatorial, where the Democratic candidate Josh Shapiro is facing off against the Republican nominee Doug Mastriano, and Mastriano is one of the most dangerous and extreme candidates, and he is also cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But we will get to that. Let's not get to the Cocoa Puffs right away. Start with Greg Abbott. We did a live stream on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook last week of this debate. The debate is the incumbent Republican governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, against the challenger, Beto O'Rourke. And we actually did learn a lot about Greg Abbott during this debate, including undeniable confirmation that Abbott is a completely disgusting and a completely immoral and dishonest person, which is sort of like the trifecta for Republicans in 2022. Let's start with the first clip. In this clip, you will see Greg Abbott, when presented with the reality about abortion in the world, he says, listen, we're trying to get people baby supplies, so you don't really need access to abortion when you've got baby supplies, do you?
Is Plan B the alternative when it comes to somebody who is pregnant from rape or incest?
Well, it depends on what you mean by alternative. An alternative, obviously, is to do what we can to assist and aid the victim, and that is to help get them medical assistance that they need and the care that they need, but also to know what their options are. They're going to know that the state, through our Alternatives to Abortion program, provides living assistance, baby supplies, all kinds of things that can help them. Also, we've increased funding for prenatal and postpartum care.
Thank you.
Listen, guys, if you are, and I shouldn't say guys, because it's not guys. Listen, if you are in the situation where you are raped by a family member and you become pregnant, sure, you might think that what you want is to decide for yourself with the counsel of medical professionals that you might want to not carry that pregnancy to term. We have this alternative where we'll give you baby supplies after you're forced to birth the baby. This is Republicans in 2022. Now, they deserve to suffer electoral losses as a result of this complete and utter insanity. Whether they will is a different question, and I don't actually know the answer right now. Also, during this very same debate, Greg Abbott got caught lying, just straight up lying. Here is Greg Abbott claiming he didn't coordinate he denies that he didn't coordinate these political stunts where they sent immigrants to different democratically run cities. He just straight up gets caught lying. Check this out.
Governor, I want to talk to you. You talked about migrants and the busing of migrants. Many migrant advocates and Democratic elected officials have expressed concerns about the treatment of migrants being bused from Texas to other states and cities. Here's New York Mayor Eric Adams talking about that just last week.
Yep.
And when we reached out to Governor Abbott and stated, can we coordinate? Can we identify, who's traveling here, that we don't have to guess this? They refuse to do so.
The White House has called this a political stunt. Governor Abbott, is this a political stunt? And has there been coordination with the states and cities these migrants are being taken to? And if not, why not? You have 60 seconds, sir.
So this operation began after meeting with local officials, sheriffs.
Understand how slick that is. He says, we have coordinated. We coordinated with local officials here in Texas. No. But Greg, the issue is, why didn't you coordinate with the people in the cities where you were sending the migrants? He tries to slip in. No, we spoke to all sorts of people here in Texas. Not
mayors, police chiefs, and county judges, where they were overrun with the number of migrants that Border Patrol had dumped into their tiny little communities. They needed relief, and busing was one of the ways of providing them relief, and thus began the process of busing the migrants to cities that self-identified as sanctuary cities. Mayor Adams has never called my office, never talked to anybody in my administration.
And that is a lie. We now have the receipts. Thankfully, Fabian Levy, who is the press secretary to New York City Mayor Eric Adams, published emails with redacted email addresses where you just very clearly, very, very clearly see there are email chains. We have one up on the screen right now. They did attempt to communicate, and it was Greg Abbott that opted not to. Quickly proven to be a complete and total lie. Beto would have, quite frankly, a very strong closing statement and really puts significant pressure on Abbott on the issue of doing nothing about firearms violence in Texas.
O'Rourke, we'll start with you tonight. 30 seconds for your closing statement. Your time starts now.
Thank you. Look, I don't think that Greg Abbott wakes up wanting to see children shot in their schools or for the grid to fail, but it's clear that he's incapable or unwilling to make the changes necessary to prioritize the lives of our fellow Texans. That's why it's on all of us to make sure that we have change at the ballot box this November 8th. I'll keep your lights on. I'll make sure that I keep your kids safe. We'll reduce property taxes, and we'll prioritize the lives of each and every single Texan in this state.
All right. So, by the way, the debate was a total disaster in terms of the format. There were times where the candidates were given 15 seconds to respond to something. It's one of these things where the format becomes an enemy of itself, where in order to stick to this arbitrary format, they completely ruin the possibility of any deep discussion on any issue. So unfortunately, we didn't really learn very much other than confirming some of the horrible things we suspected about Greg Abbott going in. Now, one interesting thing, KXAN out of Austin, Texas, did a focus group before and after the debate, and they had them watch the debate. The debate itself turned a whole bunch of that room in favor of Beto O'Rourke. So check this out. This is the start, and you'll see them put up the numbers.
You guys had a lot to say during the focus group. We were able to track your reactions in real time. But before our debate this evening, we polled you with a couple of questions. And one of the responses that we got, we want to share with you now. We have a graphic to show you. This is how you voted. Okay, so the way that the focus group voted before the debate was 40% said they plan to support Greg Abbott, 27% said they plan to support Beto, and 33% were undecided. I'm just going to skip through the 2 minutes of stuff that they talk about and just show you these final results after the debate. The Abbott number was at 43%. Beto had exploded to 50% support in the room, leaving only 7% undecided. So that's the good news on this race. The not so good news is that the polling in general isn't very good for Beto. But again, the idea is the debate might change that. On average, it is Abbott +8 looking at official polling in that race. So if you live in Texas, a very important race for you to vote in. Let's talk now about Florida. Florida is a state where incumbent Republican Senator Marco Rubio is trying to stave off a challenge from a Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings. If I voted in Florida, I would vote for Demings over Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio appeared on CNN over the weekend. He sounded very, very sick. Hopefully it's not COVID and just a cold, but he sounded ill. And he was confronted about the fact that in the past he has voted against funding for other states when they are hit with a natural disaster. But now he wants money for Florida when it's his state recovering from Hurricane Ian. Now, to remind everybody in my audience, I think they all should get the federal funds for disaster relief. But what we're talking about here is hypocrisy. Now, when Dana Bash confronts Rubio with this hypocrisy, he tries to pull some weird pork thing. And Dana Bash, good for her, is prepared for it, and she calls it out for the lie that it is. Check this out.
Senator, you wrote a letter Friday to the Senate Appropriations Committee asking for disaster relief dollars for desperately needed resources to rebuild Florida communities. After Hurricane Sandy hit northeastern states in 2012, you voted no on a $50 billion relief package. I know you supported a smaller version, but why should other senators vote for relief for your state when you didn't vote for a package to help theirs?
Right.
Oh, I've always voted for hurricane and disaster relief. I've even voted for it without pay for it. What I didn't vote for in Sandy is because they had included things like a roof for a museum in Washington, D.C., for fisheries in Alaska. It had been loaded up with a bunch of things that had nothing to do with disaster relief. And I wouldn't support disaster relief efforts. I would never put out there that we should go use a disaster relief package for Florida as a way to pay for all kinds of other things people want around the country. So I think that's the key in moments like this. And Sandy, unfortunately, they loaded it up. They really did, with a bunch of things that had nothing to do with Sandy. But
get ready.
I voted for every disaster relief package, especially that's clean, and I'll continue to do so. When it comes to Florida, I'll do that again, and we'll make sure that that package is clean and doesn't have stuff for other people in there.
I read the Congressional Research Service report last night. It sounds like that roof actually was damaged by the hurricane, and what happened in Alaska was...
Turns out it wasn't a random roof, Marco.
...the result of another disaster. But in any event, my question is about the future. Are you telling me that if Hurricane Ian relief contains anything that smells like pork, you'll vote no?
Sure. I'll fight against it having pork in it.
Well, that's a different thing. You'll fight against it, but you'll vote for it in this particular case. This is not unique to Rubio, not like in Rubio's defense. I mean, we're talking about Rubio because it's Florida. He represents Florida, but this is really common. Over the last decade on this program, it's been, what, 24 times that I've come to you all with peace and love and tears in my eyes. And I've said to you, here is another elected official from Oklahoma. Oklahoma just got hit with tornadoes. This very same Oklahoma official, when it was Superstorm Sandy affecting New York and New Jersey, they voted against it. And now they're saying, give me the money, please. We need it for the people. These are hypocrites, and there's dozens of them, and it's not unique to Marco Rubio. But Marco Rubio is the guy running for re-election right now and checking in on the polling there. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Marco Rubio leading Val Demings on average by 2.8 percentage points, within reach. And of course, all these guys, and I do mean Rubio and DeSantis, all of a sudden they're friendly with Biden and they're all in favor of relief because they don't want to lose their office because of a disastrous botched reaction to Hurricane Ian. That's their priority right now. All right, third, looking at 2022 elections, we go to Doug Mastriano. Now, the context here is that Doug Mastriano is one of the most unhinged and dangerous top-level Republican candidates this election cycle. Doug Mastriano wants the voters of Pennsylvania to make him their governor. We have an alternative who's just completely uncontroversial and normal. His name is Josh Shapiro. He's the Democrat. And if you vote in Pennsylvania, I suggest that you support Josh Shapiro. Here is Doug Mastriano bravely taking the position at an event over the weekend that if he becomes the governor of Pennsylvania, he will ban pole dancing in public schools and he will ban pornography in public schools. Are there those things in public school? Well, it doesn't really seem like it, but he's going to ban them very strongly. Check this out. And by the way, look at the crowd reaction.
On day one, the sexualization of our kids, pole dancing, and all this other crap that's going on will be forbidden in our schools.
Ban it.
On day one, all the pornographic books,
the pornography
that are in elementary schools will be pulled out.
They're going to pull it out.
On day one and done, critical race theory is out the window. Yep.
There it is. They don't know what it is, but they sure know how to throw it out of a window. What image does Doug Mastriano have of what happens in schools? Like, is there a lot of pole dancing in Pennsylvania elementary schools? It's sort of like, well, I will ban heroin at lunchtime in our public schools. Oh, wow. That sounds serious. Is there heroin being distributed at lunchtime? No, but I'm going to ban it right away. While you're at it, ban the virus as well and just take care of that problem. Fortunately, the polling in Pennsylvania looks pretty okay right now for Josh Shapiro. On average, Shapiro is leading this radical, unhinged Republican by 10. Shapiro plus 10.2. Doesn't mean we stay home. Doesn't mean we assume we have it in the bag. But it is looking like if everybody who says they're going to vote votes, Doug Mastriano will be sent back to wherever he came from, and he can work on issues like pornography and pole dancing in school. 3 of the races. We will talk about many more this week. We'll take a quick break. Let me know on Twitter at @dpacman, what race are you paying the most attention to? Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpacman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpacman.com. With absolutely no delay, because I respect all of you too much to delay any further, let's get right into the wacky political happenings in Warren, Michigan that took place over the weekend. Later, we're going to get into Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest claim that Democrats are out there assassinating Republicans willy-nilly. It's not true. We'll get to it a little bit later. But where was this all happening? Well, it was happening in Warren, Michigan, because failed former President Donald Trump, dripping wet, just the sweat dripping off of him, more orange than ever, visibly scared about what is his future in this country in the context of 4 or more criminal investigations against him, dripping, just slathered. He rallied in Michigan, supposedly in support of a number of different Republicans. He barely spoke about them, as is often the case. The rallies are all about him. One such Republican is Tudor Dixon. That's her name, Tudor Dixon. And she is getting crushed right now by the Democratic incumbent governor, Gretchen Whitmer, despite Trump attacking Whitmer for the last 3 years since COVID started. Trump starts his rally in Warren, Michigan. He now has a new election hypothesis. He claims that a guy named John James won his Senate race in 2020. John James lost his Senate race in 2020. So it's not just Trump's election that now he is lying about. With no basis in fact whatsoever, he goes, I think John James actually won. Now, you might be like, no, John James isn't a senator. And you'd be right, because he lost.
And somebody that I've known for a long time, he did great. I think he happened to win the last election for the Senate. I happen to think he won it by quite a bit. And now he's way leading. He's doing a fantastic job. He's got the most.
Yeah. John James lost his election. He didn't win. Had he won, he would be a senator right now. Donald Trump also makes the extraordinarily disturbing comment that we will never have a fair election again in the United States. Well, then why would anyone vote?
But I'm afraid we have never had, and I don't believe we'll ever have a fair election again.
Wow, that's a big statement. Now, certainly not if Trump has his say. I mean, listen, were it for Trump, had Trump gotten his way in 2020, the president right now would be the guy who didn't win anything. It would be the guy who not only lost the popular vote, also lost the electoral vote. He would be president right now. So when they say things like this, what we should hear is them saying, if it's up to us, there will never be a fair election in this country again. Donald Trump then still not really knowing much about dogs. Listen to what he has to say about dogs.
Now think of it. They're against all of those things. The way they win is to cheat in elections. They cheat like dogs.
They cheat like dogs. Dogs don't cheat. Donald Trump, we know his relationship with our canine friends is clearly very scrambled, but dogs don't really cheat. Dogs actually are very much the opposite. Okay, Trump then suggests that China infected the U.S. with COVID to punish us because of the tariffs that Trump put on China, which, of course, Trump still doesn't understand are actually paid by American companies. The American companies pay the tariffs when they import Chinese goods.
We saved many industries. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs and taxes from China. They did not like me too much. That's why a lot of people said, I wonder why COVID came here.
I wonder why. It's another conspiracy theory. The reason COVID came here, I mean, okay, fine. It started in China. And then it went to Italy, and then it went to London, and eventually it got here. It was sent by China through many other countries as punishment for tariffs, which our own companies paid. It's economics, guys. Don't you understand? What's so confusing about that? Trump then lies, and this is part of like the lurid stories part of his rallies. Trump lies that Democrats support abortion after birth. What? Who has ever said that? No one.
But the radical Democrats believe in abortion, and really right from the moment of birth and even after birth. You can't let this happen. There's no country in the world that wants what these crazy people want. They are radical. They want to rip...
Except it's all not true.
...babies from the wombs. Remember during the debate with crooked Hillary Clinton, I said they want to rip the baby from the womb even in the 9th month. Michigan, you need to dump this wild-eye extremist Gretchen Whitmer and put...
Yeah, Whitmer's going to win. And of course, there are statistically, there are almost no abortions in the 9th month. Talk to OBGYNs. I've done it. We've done it on the show. We've talked about it. It essentially does not happen if a woman comes in at 38 weeks pregnant and says, I think I want an abortion. You think OBGYNs just go, sure, have an abortion. And then, of course, the post-birth thing is just completely fabricated. Trump then says that they, presumably Democrats, I guess, want to see him in prison.
I think they'd like to see me in prison. Can you imagine? I think they'd like... You know why? You know why? Because they're sick.
They're sick people. One of the things that's interesting is these Republicans love to say they are for law and order. All the time they say it. We're for law and order. We're for law and order. My position as someone on the left is not, I want to see Trump in prison. I'm out for blood. It's, if there is evidence that Trump should be charged, then charge him. And then if he is convicted, sentence him appropriately. And maybe that'll include prison time. That's law and order. Okay, not what they claim. Trump then sort of waxes poetic about authoritarian Chinese President Xi, where he talks about how great it is that he's just killing drug dealers.
Much of the crime wave is caused by drug dealers who during their lives will kill an average of 500 American citizens. Think of it. Think of it. And I tell the story, I'll tell it quickly, but when I was dealing with China, and when I was dealing with Russia, and when I was dealing with all these countries, I got to know them all well, and I asked President Xi, they have 1.5 billion people, and they'd say, is he smart? I'd say, yes, he's smart. And then the press would say, he's saying President Xi is smart. Yeah, he's the ruler of 1.5 billion. He's smart, very smart, beyond smart. I said, President, do you have a drug problem? No,
anyway, then he tells the story of how Xi told him that they execute the drug dealers and they have like 100% conviction rate. When I hear about 100% conviction rate, I start wondering, is that really a fair justice system? But Trump is completely enamored by it. Then we get to the big finish, which now includes a sort of QAnon music backdrop. This is now a regular part of these rallies.
In the history of the world.
I have not added this music. Last time, some of my viewers thought I added the music. They are now doing this at the rally.
But now, we are a nation in decline. We are a failing nation. We are a nation that has the highest inflation in 50 years.
So anyway, why is it that the cults never have good music? I've noticed that. There's just, the music's always so weird. We laugh to avoid crying because this is really, really disturbing. And it sort of gets awkward at one point during this musical portion of the speech when Trump talks about brutal murders. He loves using these lurid examples of violence to whining about flight cancellations, which of course don't affect him since he flies private. And it's all really awkward.
Thieves are allowed to go into stores and openly rob them, beat up the help, and kill people. They will kill people, and they kill them at will, if necessary, and even if not necessary. And there is no retribution.
They're doing necessary and unnecessary killings. Well, if they're necessary, are they really evil? What does that even mean? Very confusing.
We are a nation whose once revered airports are a dirty, crowded mess where you sit and wait for hours and then are notified that the plane won't leave. And they have no idea when they will as a nation.
Trump also is furious that he has not gotten credit for some of his recent flights to his frequent flyer miles.
when they will be delivered and when you will be delivered to your destination. It's
all right. I can't do any more of it, but it's gone completely cult-like and an extraordinarily dangerous and unhinged speech. The good news, if there's any, is that a bunch of the people Trump is supporting in Michigan seem to be heading towards some pretty humiliating losses. One last really funny moment. I believe this was after the speech, but maybe it was before. And again, the speech was in Michigan. This guy, Brian Glenn, who's one of the hosts on Right Side Broadcasting Network, this guy, Brian, has been interviewing Trump for years all over the country. They go to every rally, and Trump talks to him about your governor, Gretchen Whitmer, as if he doesn't even recognize that this is the same dude who is not from Michigan, and he's been interviewing Trump dozens of times a year. Look at this.
Presents the values of the people from Michigan, and your governor's done a very poor job. As you know, we've lost a lot of business in Michigan. They've lost a lot of jobs in Michigan. I think Tudor's going to do very well.
Mr. President, always a pleasure.
So anyway, Trump doesn't even seem to know who he's talking about there. Scary stuff, but remember, it's always scarier that people follow this stuff, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Saturday night, Trump rally in Warren, Michigan, in support of Tudor Dixon and a number of other Republican candidates. Trump dripping wet, afraid. We already talked about that part. Let's look at some video of the people who said, I'm going to go to this rally. Here is a woman who claims to teach economics. I don't know where her PhD in economics is from or anything. And she says she's telling her students, and again, we don't know where this is happening, to buy gold and silver.
And so I just really do my best in regards to teaching them about economics, showing them the value, talking about silver and gold and precious metals versus investing in the stock market.
No supply and demand curves, none of that stuff. Gold coins.
Because I say at the end of the day, what would you rather have in your safe? Would you rather have gold and silver, dollar bills, or stock certificates? What's going to really give you that value that you can take home?
Yep. Probably one of the most cited economic scholars in the world, and it's just my ignorance where I have not heard of this woman. Again, unclear where she's teaching economics. There was a guy at the Trump rally who, it's whenever they mention anyone who's gay, like there's a comment about Marjorie Taylor Greene mentioned Pete Buttigieg, and she just can't avoid a homophobic comment when she mentions a gay person. Here's a guy who mentions Anderson Cooper, and again, like makes just a weird homophobic comment.
First prime minister in a Catholic hardcore country, and she won with that much landslide. Where is all of them to be happy with it, right? Nothing, zero, zip, silent. CNN, they don't say anything. What's his name? Anderson Cooper, he's a gay. He's supposed to support that, no? For women's rights. Baloney.
Where is he?
Yep. Anderson Cooper is a gay, as this individual points out, and therefore Anderson Cooper should like the new radical neo-fascist prime minister of Italy because she's a woman and gay men like women's rights. Quite a political analysis from this gentleman. Really interesting. He also later was interviewed, or earlier, who knows, earlier or later, and said that Jared Kushner's ability to solve problems is just incredible.
Him and his Kushner, his son-in-law, amazing. This guy like has a magic wand that can fix it all.
Yeah. And remember, Jared Kushner was assigned by Trump to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And, we all know how that turned out. One woman that was interviewed by Real America's Voice at the Trump rally over the weekend, she threw herself at the mercy of the audience, apologizing because she used to be on the left. Listen to this.
I wanted to apologize to humanity for voting for the Antichrist Obama. I deeply apologize. I used to be a Democrat. I was blue all my life.
She was blue.
I was also pro-choice, and I was an atheist until January 21st.
And now she seems to have a cross that she's wearing. So she went from being an atheist to being a Christian.
2021. I had a sudden awakening. It was absolutely crazy. So I went from blue to red to MAGA, and I'm here, and I absolutely love it.
Well, I want to tell you, you don't have anything to apologize for. We all make mistakes in our life, and that's where God's grace comes in.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest thing for me is you found the Lord.
It is.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I wrote about it on my Substack.
She's got a Substack. Oh, beautiful.
No one would believe me, except my husband was there when it happened. It happened so suddenly and so amazing. And
it was almost like a stroke. It happened so quickly.
it was just like a switch was turned on.
There it is.
And a memory stick was like stuck into my brain, and I just started preaching out of nowhere. It was the most insane thing ever.
It sounds like it. It absolutely sounds like it. That's very interesting. Couple other clips. Here's some people at the Trump rally with the so-called election integrity force who are trying to sign up so-called poll challengers to challenge votes.
And part of what we're doing is teaching classes and courses, trying to credential as many poll challengers as we can.
By the way, credential, it's such a, that's an interesting term for what they're trying to do. Quite a credential they get.
So are you signing up folks so that if they want to be a poll challenger, they can?
Yes, absolutely. You can go to mc4ei.com or electionintegrityforce.com and sign up to be a poll challenging volunteer. We are credentialing people all over the state, so you don't have to be here in Macomb. Or
yeah, it's quite a credentialing body that this guy is doing. Okay, and then lastly, here's a woman who loves that the Republican candidate Tudor Dixon for governor in Michigan is completely against all abortion. This woman loves it.
If she got molested by a family member, she would keep her child. And I'm right with Tudor. I would keep mine too. So please do not vote for Tudor, give up on Tudor because she's saying she does not want abortions in Michigan under no exceptions. I'm willing to go even a little bit extra and say that me and Tudor, we will have discussions and I will be sitting with her and we will make a way because this is the way we will do. Planned Parenthood should be working vigorously and effortlessly for those abortion laws, not Tudor Dixon. They should get monies for these women. If abortions won't be in Michigan, then fly those women somewhere and get them some help because, no, I do have sympathy for people who's raped and incest, but Planned Parenthood should get monies and send these women to another outside state that's close.
Okay, so I guess what she's saying is she's against any exceptions for rape and incest, but she's empathetic to people to whom that happens, but fly them to a different state. That's very weird and extraordinarily scrambled, but it is what it is. Scary stuff at the Trump rally. And we will have all of these clips on our Instagram, which you can find at David Pakman Show. If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, so I teased this story earlier, and I think it's a really important one because it is exactly the type of deception and stochastic terrorism, quite frankly, that will lead to real-world violence. The headline that started floating around is Democrats have started killing Republicans. Democrats are just murdering Republicans. And the questions are, where did that come from? And where is this supposedly happening? Well, where it came from is Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking at the Trump rally in Warren, Michigan over the weekend. Daily Beast covered it. Many media outlets covered it. And the headlines are something like, Marjorie Taylor Greene says Democrats have started killings of Republicans. Let's listen to what she had to say. And as is often the case, actually, should I explain? Now, let's play it first. Let's just play it, and then there's plenty to talk about here.
We're all targets now, though, for daring to push back against the regime, and it doesn't stop at a weaponized legal system.
By the way, use of the word regime to suggest that the Biden administration is anything other than a democratically elected presidency.
I'm not going to mince words with you all. Democrats want Republicans dead, and they've already started the killings. An 18-year-old boy was run down by a Democrat driver who confessed to killing the teenager simply because he was a Republican.
That's not true, and I'll tell you about it later.
Even right here in Michigan, just last week, an 83-year-old woman was shot in the back for advocating for the unborn.
That is also not true, and I will tell you about that story in a minute.
Joe Biden has declared every freedom-loving American an enemy of the state. But under Republicans, we will take back our country from the communists who have stolen it and want us to disappear. We will expose the unelected bureaucrats, the real enemies within, who have abused their power and declared political warfare.
All right. So first of all, there are no communists that have taken over. Joe Biden's not a communist. The communists and the socialists really don't like Biden because they say he's basically just a centrist, Republican light capitalist. Okay, so there's no communists here. That's just nonsense. The rhetoric that Marjorie Taylor Greene is using there is completely unacceptable, and it is very dangerous because the lunatics in the audience will hear it and they'll believe it, and then they might go and say, well, listen, if the Democrats are just killing Republicans on sight, then we can do the same. But understand that the stories that Marjorie Taylor Greene told aren't true. She says a Democrat ran over a Republican because he was a Republican, just ran him over with his car. What happened, and you can Google the story, two morons, more than likely, got into a political argument. We don't know whether alcohol or substances were a factor, but two people got into an argument. It was an argument about politics. The argument escalated, and one of them jumped in his car and hit the other person with his car. It was a Democrat who hit a Republican. It's wrong. It's a crime. Political discussions should never escalate to that. Should be charged, should be punished if convicted. But Marjorie Taylor Greene wants you to think some guy just drove by someone with a MAGA hat that he didn't know and ran him over. Like it's just some kind of street assassination. This was an argument that became a fight that went crazy. Crimes were committed, punish the criminals, but it's not my neighbor's a Democrat, I'm going to go run him over. It didn't happen, okay? Then she says an 83-year-old woman was shot for advocating for the unborn. It's not what happened, okay? Google the story. A man in Michigan was charged for shooting an elderly woman in an altercation that involved an accidental shooting. Richard Harvey is 74 years old. The story, as far as we know right now, is that Joan Jacobson was campaigning door-to-door in Michigan against abortion. That part is true. Joan Jacobson came to the door of the Harveys. Harvey and his wife were arguing. They'd had a disagreement with the woman who was going door-to-door arguing against abortion. And then at a certain point, the guy grabbed his, what are the details here? Grabbed his rifle, a .22, grabbed a .22. The rifle belonged to the guy's wife and said, hey, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here, and fired a warning shot at a tree. Now, it's already wrong. I'm already completely against it. Okay. Then he says that he, quote, without thinking, tried to hit the woman's clipboard out of her hands with the rifle. And at that point, he accidentally shot the woman. So negligent discharge should be charged with a crime if the investigation determines one was committed, as I always say. But it was not a story. The way Marjorie Taylor Greene paints it is there was a pro-life event and a guy showed up with a rifle and shot a pro-life protester. This was another one of these altercation confrontation things. I'm not defending them, but they are not the lurid assassinations, I mean, that Marjorie Taylor Greene claims them to be. Trump does this a lot during his speeches. Trump will tell stories like, we just saw the conviction of an illegal immigrant who was released into the public and shot someone dead, right? And then you look up the story and the crime happened when Trump was president. Yes, now they were convicted, but what does it matter? The crime happened when Trump was president, trying to make the point that under Biden, these things are happening, even though it happened under Trump in some of these cases. Look up every one of these. And of course, extraordinarily dangerous, because when people on the right hear these stories, they become more likely on average to act out in violent ways because they believe that the left is doing it. Extraordinarily dangerous stuff. Okay, last side ancillary story from this event that took place in Michigan, this Trump rally in Michigan, which is just completely and totally wild. I do have a couple of MyPillow clips here. MyPillow, also known as Mike Lindell, the CEO and founder of MyPillow, he was at the Trump rally in Warren, Michigan. He was interviewed by Right Side Broadcasting, and he made the claim that the FBI found him at the Hardee's where they seized his phone because they illegally put some kind of a tracking device on him. Now, does he have any proof of this? No, he doesn't.
It was like 1 o'clock, or no, like I guess 11:30 in the morning.
How did they know where you were? Were they following you?
No, we had no idea. So
But
we
did the
pulled
FBI?
No, we pulled into a Hardee's. Well, how did they know? They tracked me illegally. They put a tracking device, or my phone. We don't know yet. We're trying to get to the bottom of that. But what they did,
we just don't know. You know, if they had a suspicion that Pillow was in town, they probably just said, let's just wait at Hardee's. He's probably bound to show up eventually. In all seriousness, isn't the tracking device his phone? Like, we all carry these phones around and we mostly all have GPS enabled. Like, he's willingly carrying it around until the FBI took it. Just MyPillow really not making too much sense. And then, one more Pillow clip from the rally. Here, he was kind of jumping on the some Republicans are bad train, saying that the Republicans nominated in Georgia aren't good. And by the way, what he means by that is that the Republicans in Georgia weren't as willing as he wanted them to be to try to just give Georgia's electoral votes to Trump, even though Biden won.
we're doing a class action lawsuit against all machines.
Okay, anyway, here's the explanation.
I don't care. You know, you got down in Georgia, you're stuck with those three because they're Republicans.
Yeah,
well,
no.
what's better? To me, there's nothing worse than evil. Evil doesn't show sides.
Right.
Evil doesn't show, you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. No, it holds no bounds. So you have I believe the worst three Republicans in history down in Georgia.
Ever.
And because of the cover-up that they've done. And then here you.
Yeah. So what he means is, I would like them to have given Trump Georgia, even though Biden won it. That's effectively what MyPillow is saying here. And then meanwhile, by the way, if he's saying these three are the bad candidates, by definition, it means that Herschel Walker in Georgia must be a good candidate, which is laughable and also really, really scary. So that's all the stuff I want to talk about from Michigan. We heard from Trump. We heard from the audience members. We heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene, and now we heard from MyPillow. You tell me who's the scariest. I kind of lean towards it's the audience, because without the audience, none of these people get any attention. But because they have followers, they have influence, and that is truly, truly sick stuff. Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. I saw a super interesting headline this morning about the U.S. military. And we've talked about the U.S. military so much on this program. It relates to foreign policy. It relates to budgetary priorities. It relates to culture in many ways, because there is this military culture that exists in the United States. Okay, so what's the headline? The headline from the Army Times is that the Army has missed its recruiting goal by about 15,000 soldiers. And as you read through the article by Lolita Balder from the Associated Press, you see that 15,000 soldier shortfall is about 25% of its recruitment goal this year. Now, at big companies, when you miss earnings projections by 2%, it's a pretty big deal. So understand that falling 25% short, and the military is a large organization, falling 25% short of your recruitment goal for a year is a really, really big deal. The article also points out that all military services struggled in what they're describing as a tight jobs market to find young people both willing and fit to enlist. Adding, while the Army was the only service that didn't meet its target, all others had to dig deep into their pool of delayed entry applicants, which will put them behind as they begin the next recruiting year on Saturday. The article, to its credit, says the worsening problem stirs debate about whether America's fighting force should be restructured or reduced in size if the services can't recruit enough. and also puts added pressure on National Guard and reserves to help meet mission requirements. So there's actually a bunch of interesting layers to this conversation. First of all is just the question, why aren't as many people as at times past applying, or are the people applying not meeting the relatively modest, but still there, requirements for joining the military when it comes to physical fitness and health conditions and this sort of thing? One really interesting aspect to this is that wages are up in many sectors, including sectors that could be alternatives to joining the military. And if you look at wage and salary growth in the United States, this is a chart looking at the last 25 years. You see that basically dating back to sort of early in 2020, the pandemic, quite frankly, there has been significant wage growth in the United States. Now, there are those who will say this is a good thing because people are making more. Some on the right who often criticize lack of wage growth when there's a Democratic president now say the wage growth is bad because it's part of inflation, which is making it hard to hire people. You know, the right is going to say it's bad no matter what if a Democrat is in office. But let's be quite frank and direct about this. If you can make a better wage not joining the military, there are lots of people who will choose to do the job outside of the military. Or said a different way, when wages aren't as oppressively low outside of the military, it's going to be bad for military recruiting. Now, there's also sort of political reasons why folks might not be jumping to sign up for the military at this point in time. Look at someone like Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, who over the last week has been in a bunch of viral video clips saying, why don't we get rid of the VA altogether, the Veterans Affairs Department? And of course, you might believe that he really wants to improve care for veterans by getting rid of the VA and doing it a different way. But for the most part, veterans like the VA, and it's probably not helping recruiting that you have even Republicans who are supposedly always for the military and veterans openly hostile to some of the aspects of the military world, which includes the VA. And saying we should get rid of that. We have the stories of female service members regularly assaulted and worried that if they report the assault within the military, they will be sent for a psych eval, maybe deemed unfit for service, and they are the ones who will suffer rather than the person they accuse of assaulting them. But that's just the kind of nitty gritty of why might we be seeing this problem. And of course, you can also make the claim, although I don't have data on it, that maybe people who are targeted by the military to join aren't seeing it as a valiant mission compared to at times past. We know recruiting after 9/11 went sky high because so many people thought, if I join the military now, I'm going to be able to do something to stop or hurt the people that did 9/11. Then they were sent to Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11, and the rest is history, but that's not the story for today. But there's a whole other aspect to this, which is it should make us ask the question, why does the military need to be so big? And we can talk about big in terms of what it costs, but also huge militaries can cause foreign policy blunders. And we've seen this in the past. If you look at stories from the Korean War, Vietnam to some degree, when you have a really big military, it can make one believe that it is even more powerful and invulnerable. And you make military decisions that go above and beyond even the power that you have. And it can lead to very bad military decisions, create quagmires, endless, sort of like a constant rotation of loss of life. It's kind of what's happening to the Russian military in Ukraine right now. They do have the stronger military, but they overstated in their own minds even the strength. And so there's lots of geopolitical reasons why having a big military isn't necessarily the best thing. And of course, if you're someone like me, a progressive social democrat, I'm not for abolishing the military. I recognize there are threats to the United States. The U.S. should have a military, but it shouldn't be nearly as large and far-reaching as the one we have is. And so much of the money that is spent on defense could be better spent elsewhere. I won't give you the full rant of all the areas in which it could be spent, but I have many clips and stories about that. So needless to say, the military struggling to recruit. What comes next? And to be clear, this has nothing to do with Joe Biden. I saw anecdotally on Twitter, people saying this is because Biden has disgraced the country, so no one wants to serve. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. I also saw this is because of Joe Biden's student loan debt relief, because one of the reasons people were joining the military was because they needed money to pay off their student loans. First of all, that debt relief was only just announced, and that couldn't possibly be the reason why in the last year there was a shortfall in recruiting. And number two, you're sort of saying like we need to keep people really desperate financially so that they'll join the military. That doesn't speak wonders about the American military if that's what it takes. Let me know your thoughts. I don't know that this problem is going to abate anytime soon. Republicans and right-wingers are again furious about candy. Now, if this rings a bell, it's because Tucker Carlson was furious about candy not that long ago. Check out this clip from OAN where they are furious that M&Ms have gone woke by introducing a purple M&M representing inclusiveness and acceptance. Isn't that just terrible?
Right? M&Ms, the candy we all grew up eating. Well, they released their brand new character in over a decade, and the brand new character is Purple M&M, which is supposed to represent inclusivity and acceptance. I think it's a female character, but I'm pretty sure they haven't said. Maybe it's transgender. Joining me now.
There you go. For a very big explosive reaction to the new M&Ms thing. They focus on the dumbest things because they completely lack an interest and ability to talk about actual policy issues. There was recently a headline. I'm not covering, I don't know that it's a story in and of itself, but I saw a headline this morning about how in 2017, Barack Obama was telling Democrats that there's really just no policy. There's not even a semblance of policy from Republicans, that the party is essentially a joke. That's my word, not Barack Obama's. And this has been increasingly the case for a while. And these are, when we say social issues, it's gone beyond social issues. It's not even about like abortion and gay marriage anymore. It's about M&Ms. And again, if it rings a bell, Tucker Carlson also had a story back in January. It feels like it's been years, but it was only about 10 months ago, where Tucker was upset that the androgynous design of M&Ms was no longer turning him on, quite frankly. Remember this lunacy?
Finally tonight, we don't usually give story tips to NPR, but here's a story they might want to cover pretty soon and doubtless will. M&M's, the candy company, has just announced that it's redesigning its cartoon characters to be more gender inclusive. Bet you didn't think M&Ms were pushing intolerance, but they were. They've been changed. You're seeing the changes right now on your screen. The green M&M, you will notice, is no longer wearing sexy boots. Now she's wearing sensible sneakers. Why the change? Well, according to M&M's, quote, we all win when we see more women in leading roles because leading women do not wear sexy boots. Leading women wear frumpy shoes. The frumpier, the better. That's the rule. The other big change is that the brown M&M has, quote, transitioned from high stilettos to lower block heels. Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, we've achieved equity.
Tucker, for a long time, was really turned on by the design of M&Ms, and all of a sudden they are no longer turning him on, which is a really sad thing, and woke has won, apparently. Guys, they are focused on the dumbest things, and it is not a glitch. It is a feature, not a bug. They know there's no policy left. They know they're losing on policy. You ask the American people, hey, should the rich be taxed in order to ensure that nobody falls below a certain level of standard of living? Most people agree with that. That's not good for policy when it comes to these Republicans. So instead they talk about, I'm no longer turned on by M&Ms because of woke people. That's where we are, and it's not stopping anytime soon. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's an interesting voicemail. A guy recounted a conversation he had with someone he works with, I believe. And there is such misunderstanding among right-wingers about such basic things. Listen to this voicemail, and then we'll discuss it, okay?
Hello, David. This is Bob from Texas.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a coworker, or my manager, I should say, and he was complaining about the COVID relief and saying that it affected his 401k and how much he, could put into it or something like that. And
oh man.
And I explained, I told him, well, Trump did 2 of them, and you should be doubly mad at him,
right,
instead of Biden, and I just had, I should probably do some research of my own, but how does the COVID relief funds affect 401k? And I know you're a big finance guy, you may have some insight on it.
Yeah. So listen, first of all, a ton of so Trump has started saying this at his rallies. Your 401ks are doing terribly because of Biden. What does that really mean? It's the stock market, okay? When people talk about a 401k holds the same types of assets anybody might hold directly. So it's stocks, stock mutual funds, bond mutual funds. So what they're really saying is 401k balances go up and down when the stock market goes up and down. So understand that when they talk about 401k, what they really mean is the stock market. Okay. What some right-wingers have claimed is that COVID relief packages increased inflation and therefore pushed down the value of the stock market. So, as the caller points out, if you're mad at Biden for doing that with one COVID relief package, you should be doubly mad at Trump for doing it with 2. The reality is that the effect of those COVID relief packages on global markets and the American market overall is quite limited. But I actually think that's not even the right conversation to have. The right conversation is zoom out and think for a second. Does the stock market tend to do better when there's a Democratic president or a Republican president? And the data are clear. The stock market on average does better under Democratic presidents. Now, the last couple of months haven't been good under Joe Biden. Let's wait and see what happens at the end of his term. It is not always the case, but it is usually the case that stocks do better under Democratic presidents. When stocks do better, 401k accounts do better. Let's wait until Joe Biden's term is actually complete. We're not even 2 years in at this point in time. And by the way, look up all of this stuff on your own. Unemployment tends to be lower under Democratic presidents. GDP growth tends to be higher. Job creation tends to be higher. There tend to be there have been fewer recessions under Democratic presidents, even accounting for the difference in number of years of Democratic for Republican presidents. Look it up yourself and then ask about causation correlation, and then we can have a real serious discussion. But these confused statements don't do much for any of us. We've got a great bonus show for you today. I'm out of time, but sign up at joinpatman.com. We've got a doozy of a bonus show for you when producer Pat joins us.